Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Tom's Gadget Garage. Today I'm going to be doing a range test with the Segway Ninebot Max G3 with the larger battery. So if you haven't caught it already, I went ahead and swapped the standard Segway GT3 battery into this Ninebot Max G3, which expands the capacity of this scooter to 899 watt hours instead of the standard 597 watt hours. That's approximately 51% increase. And the reason why I made that change is, I've been reading through a lot of forums, and apparently, this has been working out for a lot of folks. And so I've been holding out for the Ninebot Max G3 kind of expansion battery pack that kind of piggybacks on the scooter, but I'm not sure when that's going to be released. So in the meantime, I'm going to go have some fun with this, and we'll see just how much range we can squeeze out of this scooter today. Now, I have covered this scooter extensively on this channel in the past, including my first ride review, extreme hill climb test, endurance hill climb test, range test, night ride, the whole 9 yards. And so in that first range test, I actually rode around in sport mode with the top speed capped at 20 miles an hour, which is exactly what I do with all of my single motor commuter scooters. And that's exactly what we're going to be doing today. So we're going to cruise around in sport mode, top speed set to 20, and I have acceleration strength set to standard. Now, at the start of this ride, the dash did say that we've got 25 miles of estimated range. I can't recall if that's the same or different as the smaller battery, but the battery details in-app do show the 19,200 milliamps or 19.2 amp hours that we get with this expanded battery. So the scooter absolutely recognizes the fact that we've got a different battery on board. Now, another question that folks have had is whether or not the odometer reading stays the same when you swap out the battery. Absolutely. That doesn't change at all whatsoever. That's tied to the display. What I do want to call out, though, is that even though I'm making videos on this, I'm just documenting my experience. I'm not recommending that anybody go out and do this, primarily because I have no clue what the impact will be on the warranty for this scooter, and I'm not exactly sure how the firmware updates would work. When they push out firmware updates for different batteries, it's usually specific to the model. And the battery that we've got in here right now is for the standard Segway GT3. That's the 46.8 volt version of that scooter, not the GT3 Pro. Please do not confuse that. That is a 72 volt system. Putting a battery like that in something like this would be an absolute disaster. But anyways, the course that we're taking today is the same course that I took the first time around with the smaller battery. That way we keep things nice and consistent. And this particular path is about 70% paved surface, 30% hard packed dirt. So that's going to give us ample opportunity to test out the hydraulic suspension on this scooter. When I first started covering this scooter on the channel, one of the things I was complaining about was the throttle response. It was very touchy, and it was very difficult to calmly and smoothly maintain a speed, especially a higher speed. And it seems like through the course of various firmware updates that Segway has addressed that, so I'm very happy to see it. What's funny is I did this exact same range test yesterday on my Segway GT3 Pro. That's a 72 volt version of the GT3 series. And that scooter went forever. That took a good chunk of the day getting that range test done. So if you're interested in seeing that, I will have it on my channel. I'm about to publish it later on this afternoon. Now, before I get too ahead of myself, what's our target today? So the first time I did the range test on the Ninebot Max G3, I got 22.5 miles, which is just a hair above what I got on the original Ninebot Max G2, and slightly less than what I got on the Segway ZT3 Pro. So our target today is 22.5, and since we're using a battery that's got 51% more capacity, we should be able to get significantly more range. So we'll see how we end up netting out today. All right, so right up ahead, we got a little bit of a hill climb over this pedestrian bridge. The grade here is 8.5%, which, if you follow my content for a while, you'll know that I did our extreme hill climb test with this scooter up a 23% grade, as well as our endurance hill climb. But let's see how we do today. Should be no different than the first time around. And like I said, this scooter has got a lot of power, 850 nominal watts, 2,000 watts peak. It makes it up this kind of stuff without issue. And that's with, our top speed capped, and we're cruising around in sport mode. So All right, here we go, coming back down. Good opportunity to test out the brakes. One of the nice things that Segway did with this scooter is they put disc brakes on here. They're cable actuated. Absolutely no need for hydraulic brakes, so that's completely fine. And it's got plenty of stopping power. It's also got regenerative braking, which you can adjust the strength of in app. That way you can reduce the wear and tear on your regular brakes and put some juice into the battery at the same time. One of the things that I wish Segway had done with this scooter was put a fully functional kick plate on the rear. I think that was a big miss, and it's always been my biggest complaint, because this scooter does crank out, 2,000 watts of power, and it's got, amazing acceleration, especially if you dial up the acceleration strength, throw it into boost mode. And so I thought it was quite bizarre that they didn't include that. I mean, its competitors like the Apollo Go, the VMAX, VX2 Hub, even the Segway GT3 Pro, they all have kick plates, but for some reason they decided to maintain the same kind of rear structure that they had on the Ninebot Max G2, which, on that scooter, I think that setup was fine because it doesn't have as much punch as this scooter does, but 2,000 watts of peak power, I mean, you gotta have a kick plate. So I hope on the next iteration of that, they kind of hear some of that feedback and put a full kick plate on the back of the scooter. That's gonna allow not only for, more stance ride positions, but also gonna improve ride comfort. Like right now, my heel is on this lip at the rear of the scooter, and every time I go over bumps, it's like banging into the rear of my heel. So, I mean, a kick plate would solve that. But regardless, I still think this Ninebot Max G3 is a solid scooter. It's a very smooth operating machine. It's got more tech than scooters, 4 or 5 times its cost, which is absolutely insane. That's what Segway is known for, is the tech that they pack into their devices. And that is very true with this Ninebot Max G3. I mean, it's got so many bells and whistles. To be honest, I don't use most of them, but there's a little bit of everything in there for people. All right, so I'm getting a little carried away with all the talking here. I'm forgetting to give you my little mileage updates. We officially crossed the 8-mile mark. We've been riding for about 35 minutes, and looking at the display, it appears that we've got 81% battery remaining. So it says we've still got 21.1 miles to go. And so I'll be keeping a close eye on that. I will be marking our turnaround point right at around 60-65% battery remaining. That way we have enough juice to get back. I've mentioned this in a lot of my range test videos, but with these electric vehicles, the first half of the battery is going to be more performant than the second half of the battery. As you wear that battery down, voltage goes down, output, acceleration, top speed go down, and you're just going to get less performance. So if I were to mark my turnaround point at 50%, all else being equal, I probably wouldn't make it back to my starting point. And so I've gotten a lot of experience, the range testing, I mean, dozens upon dozens of devices, and I've been burned. I've done that walk of shame a handful of times, and it's not exciting, especially during the summer. Thankfully, it's nice and cool out right now. It's like 60 degrees out here in the Phoenix Metro this morning, so perfect riding weather. So with this bigger battery, I think my end goal is to get this into the GT3 Pro. I do want to go out adventuring a little bit in the desert on that scooter now that things are finally cooling down. And it's my understanding, based on what I've read online and some of your own comments, that it should work. And so later on I'll test that out. But before I do that, I want to take this scooter back up on my endurance hill climb. That's that, round trip 17-mile ride up and down Phoenix's South Mountain. On that ride, because the battery, was kind of smaller on the stock G3, I had to cap the speed at, 20 miles an hour to ensure that I could make it up to all 3 lookout points. With this larger battery, if we get the performance that I kind of expect out of this, we should be able to go up that mountain, kind of full speed ahead with no restrictions on speed and still make it to all 3 lookout points. So stay tuned for that video. A question that has come up is, if this battery works out, why didn't Segway put a bigger battery in here to start with? Well, I think the answer is very simple. Cost and weight. When they first did the pre-launch on this scooter, I don't remember what it was. It was like $899. That's when I bought it. I did the whole pre-order. You know, that was a great price, but then now it's like $1,200, you know, it's significantly more expensive. You add a larger battery, you end up adding costs, and even if it's just $25 or $50, that could be enough to exclude potential buyers. And it's not just cost, it's also weight. You know, in my little battery swap video, I did put both batteries on the scale, and this larger battery does weigh 2 pounds more. You know, when Segway first released the scooter, you know, they said that they maintained the weight. You know, some folks said, hey, that's still too heavy, you know, I've got to look for something lighter. I mean, if you live in a place where you got to lug scooters, you know, up an apartment building, upstairs, whatever it might be, I mean, that's a huge factor. And so 2 pounds might sound trivial, but for some folks, you know, that could be the difference between buying the scooter and not. And so I think it comes down to kind of those two variables. I do know that the Ninebot Max G2 had some, you know, heating issues, and you know, when I went to the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas, you know, their engineers had mentioned that they made some improvements to the scooter, especially around kind of the thermal properties of the scooter, the positioning of the internal charger. It looks like they added you know, a heat sink to the controller. There's a lot of different things, and now you've got more battery cells in the scooter. And these batteries, you know, as they're operating, they're generating heat. That could be more heat buildup in the scooter. So, you know, I don't know, you know, maybe they tried it with a bigger battery. You know, they're coming out with an external battery instead of a larger internal battery variant. Maybe it's a heating issue. Yeah, I don't know. That's why I do these tests. Quick little battery update. We officially crossed the 14-mile mark. We've been riding for about 56 minutes at this point. It says we got 18.4 miles remaining. Voltage 67%. So right up ahead, I'm gonna pull over to the side, hop into the app, and see what that actual voltage is. All right, so I just hopped into the app, and it looks like voltage is at 50.1, which according to my voltage chart puts us right around 70%. So I still think we got a little ways to go before we mark our turnaround point. But anyways, there's our Max G3 looking fantastic, doing a great job. I'm gonna go ahead and hop back on the scooter. We'll continue on our range test. All right, so we just crossed the 15-mile mark. We've been riding for about an hour and 2 minutes, and I went ahead and got us turned around. That way, we've got a little bit of a buffer so that we can make it back to our starting point and avoid the walk of shame. But if this holds, we should be able to get over 30 miles of range. Which is a nice little improvement over the 22 and a half. I'm not going to talk too soon. I'm going to mess it up for myself here, but hopefully we can get past that kind of threshold. Going back to that expansion battery pack that Segway announced at the Consumer Electronics Show earlier this year, I think that's a fantastic idea. If memory serves me right, it's 460 watt hours, which on top of the standard 597 watt hour battery, you're gonna get more range, more capacity than you would out of this little battery swap thing that I'm experimenting with right now. So that's awesome. And the nice thing about that is that if you need your scooter to be lighter, a little bit more portable, great, you don't have to use it. But if you're gonna be going out on a longer ride and you need that extra range, you can just slap that thing right onto the scooter and voila, you're good to go. And we've got ourselves a nice little straightaway here. I'm not gonna demonstrate it because I think I covered that at length in my original range test video, but this scooter does have cruise control. So if you are gonna be riding on kind of long straightaways like this, you can just enable that and, you know, fall asleep. No, you can just turn that on, kick back, relax a little bit. All right, quick little mileage check in here. We officially crossed the 21-mile mark, and we've been riding around for an hour and 24 minutes. Screen says we got 46% battery remaining, which comes out to about 14.2 miles left in the tank. So we'll see how accurate that is. You know, I don't know exactly how the mileage calculation works, whether it's based off of riding behavior or previous riding behavior, or just generally based off of you know, battery capacity. I'm not 100% sure. But if you remember, at the beginning of this ride, it did say we had like 25 miles of expected range in this riding mode, which obviously that's not accurate. At least I certainly hope it's not. Otherwise, I'll be doing a lot of walking. We'll see if the scooter kind of learns some of this riding behavior now that I've got a bigger battery in here. Next time I fully charge it up, we'll see if that estimate changes. One thing I like about this Max G3 is the brakes are nice and quiet. you don't hear anything, you know. Sometimes scooters got loud brakes. With this, nice and quiet. You know, this scooter does have 11-inch tires, which is bigger than the 10-inch tires that we typically see in this segment. And I think these tires are very grippy. I like them. All right, well, it looks like we're still doing very good range-wise, so taking a little bit of a detour so we can bleed off some of this battery. This Ninebot Max G3 is handling this stuff quite well. Quick mileage update. We officially crossed the 28-mile mark. We've been riding around for an hour and 51 minutes, and it looks like on the screen it says we got 22% battery remaining, which comes out to about 9.8 miles. So we're making really good progress here. This is fantastic. So this kind of gets me even more excited about that external battery pack they're coming out with. I'm gonna go ahead and hop on the surface streets for a bit here. All right, so one thing to call out is that it is taking a little bit longer to accelerate now, and I do think the scooter is starting to lower our top speed. Right now we're cruising around at about 18, 19 miles an hour. And so that's what Segway does with their ride-along technology, is they essentially draw down the power over time on purpose so that they can extend out the range. And so it's definitely a range priority scooter. Other scooters will try and, you know, maintain at least the same top speed throughout the battery range. However, that does come at the expense of range. So just depends on what you like. But if you're interested in the ride-along, yeah, you definitely got it with this. What a funny name. All right, so there's a benchmark I never thought I'd see on a Ninebot Max G3, 30 miles. So you've crossed that 30-mile mark. We've been riding around just around 2 hours at this point. Battery says 15% with 8 miles of estimated range remaining. So I'm gonna start heading back in the general direction of our starting point. Well, folks, I hope I didn't miscalculate this ride today. It says we got 10% battery remaining, and it says that there's 6.7 miles of estimated range, so we'll see how that works out. I'm a little ways away from my starting point, at least several miles. So anyways, we'll see how this works out. Once we get a little further up ahead, I'll hop into the app, see what the actual voltage is. You know, it could be that this is accurate, you know, and we do in fact have 6.7 miles of ride-along range remaining, you know. But I don't know. Throttle's all the way in. We're maintaining about 14 miles an hour right now, so things have definitely slowed down a bit. Maybe it wasn't too wise to take that detour earlier. I don't know. I don't know. All right, so I just hopped into the app. We're hovering just above 42 volts, which makes sense. It's around 10% battery remaining. And so I think we're gonna end up doing some walking today. All right, folks, well, I'm trying my best right now for this ride-along not to turn into walkie-long. Throttle's all the way in. We're maintaining about 11 miles an hour, so things are slow. 6% battery remaining. So we got about 3.9 miles left. And so, you know, I don't think this range estimation stuff is very accurate, but we'll see. We're not too far away from our starting point. I think we're within, probably within a mile. Throttle's all the way in, 10 miles an hour. I mean, this is slow. All right, so we're officially below 5%. I got a warning on the screen saying low battery level. It was beeping at me. Now, I definitely do not recommend drawing your battery down this low. Like, you know, they'll never let you go completely empty. Like, they set the threshold above the minimums for the battery cells. But still, it's not a good habit to run your battery down like this. I've got throttle all the way in, and we're moving around at about 8 miles an hour right now, so it's definitely slowed us down. You know, generally speaking, I don't think this is like a realistic speed to be riding around, but I'll take it over, you know, extended walks pushing this scooter, that's for sure. All right, folks, so there you have it. That was our range test with the Segway Ninebot Max G3 with the larger 899 watt-hour capacity battery. And on this particular ride, 34.1 miles. We had an average moving speed of 15.2 miles an hour, which I believe, if memory serves me right, is a higher average moving speed than we got with the standard battery. We hit a top speed of 20.6 miles an hour. Total elevation gain 512 feet, and we were cruising around today for 2 hours, 22 minutes. So as you can see, very good performance out of this scooter. I never thought I'd be getting more than 30 miles on a Ninebot Max G3, but we did it with the bigger battery. Now with that being said, Segway is releasing their kind of externally attachable battery. Who knows when, but they did announce it at the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas earlier this year, and that will have even more capacity, more opportunity for range. We'll have to see how that ultimately is priced. But anyways, let me know if you have any questions, comments, thoughts, concerns. Happy to address those in the comments section below. And as always, thank you so much for tuning into Tom's Gadget Garage. We'll see you next time.